Ben's going to talk about the rules, and I'm going to talk about tactics that apply at those situations and strategies, because they're two different things, tactics and strategies. And there's a little sheet, there's three pages in that document that we've given you. There's the first page has got on most of them is a chart that Ben will run you through on the rules and the sections of the rules. The other two pages, the way that I look at it is strategy and tactics, two completely different things. Strategy is how I would get my boat around the race course as fast as possible, given there was no other boats on the course. And that takes into account things like wind shifts, line bias, course bias, tide, your boat speed setup, decisions that aren't affected by other boats. Tactics are how you implement your strategy when other boats get in your way. Look at their strategy is things that you need to consider in your strategy, and with your strategy, you know what the tide's going to be, a month out from the race, because everyone can get hold of a tide chart. 2 days out, you probably know what the weather's going to be like. You know roughly where the course is going to be. Things like you can go back and look at past regattas, look at people's other results. You can start to work out what you actually need to do to win that race from days before. Your strategy can start to be built during the week, and then you refine it as more information comes to hand and you get closer and closer to the race. Things that affected are your wind oscillations, tide movements, weather mark bias, start line bias, your boat speed, best VMG. Does everyone know what VMG is? Yeah, velocity made good. Your fastest VMG and sailing in and out of marks, and staying in clean air. Then you look at tactics. So tactics is how we implement that strategy when other boats get in our way. And questions you need to ask when you come into, for example, a port and starboard situation are, do I actually need to engage this boat? So things that you need to think about, does that boat owe me time, or do I owe it time? There's no point engaging a port tack boat if you're 2 minutes ahead of it on corrected time already. How far across am I going to get in a port and starboard cross situation, which we'll cover further on in another slide. Don't get caught in little micro battles on reaches, because they're really costly, and I've got a slide later on that will actually quantify what 5 degrees off your run line costs you. The right-of-way boat can actually give way as a starboard tack boat. If it's paramount to your strategy to go left, there's no way known you're going to call a port tack boat to tack and leave you when it's going to force you right, because you're not following your strategy through. So there's a case where the starboard tack boat might give way. Luffing's definitely not the shortest route to the next mark. Being aware of your zones around marks and how the zones are measured, and being aware of the overlap that your boat creates and the angle that your boat makes changes the overlap, which we'll cover. And the golden rule is a fast boat makes you look like a tactical genius. So if you can not get caught up in micro battles and concentrate on sailing your boat as fast as possible, it'll make you look like a tactical genius every day. Then just really quickly, I know Ben touched on it, next one. So strategy versus tactics, one design racing versus performance handicap. I reckon one design racing 60% strategy, 40% tactical, because you generally spend a lot longer in clumps of boats because everyone's supposedly going the same speed. Handicap racing is 85% strategy, 15% tactical, because once you clear the start, you can see just in the deltas of all the handicaps, the boats should naturally spread out. So you, in theory, should come across boats less often on the race course.
I want to talk about the structure of the rules, because people haven't been talked through the structure of the rules. That's one of the reasons why it becomes confusing as to which rule applies and which has precedence. So port and starboard apply at the top mark, because they always apply. It's not mark room, and that's the way that it's written. Port and starboard never switch off. So in the rule book, there's an introduction, and it talks about some terminology saying this is what the race committee is, this is what a boat is, this is what a vessel is. Definitions, so the definitions are key to understanding the rules. When you see in the rule book something in italics, it means it's a defined term. So starboard is defined, tack is defined. The basic principles, there are two basic principles. One is sportsmanship and the rules, and the other one that came in the last rule book is environmental responsibility. Then we jump into the fundamental rules, which are helping those in danger, drug testing, goes all the way through to drug testing and anti-corruption, and then we get into these rules, when boats meet. So as you can see, rules 10 to 24, there are not that many rules. And on the handout that we've got, there's a table, and we've just covered off each of those when boats meet rules. So although the blue book is 232 pages, we're only talking about a few pages for when you're racing against each other. Then there's other stuff in here. There's conduct of a race, so that goes through what the race committee needs to do. Other requirements whilst racing, which is wearing a PFD, not lifelines, stuff like that. It's pretty boring. There are rules about how protests and redress is given, entry qualification, and then what the organising authority needs to do. And the scoring's all in there. Fundamental rules. So our mantra here is we want to have safe, fair and fun sailing. So safety becomes the first fundamental rule. It's so important in everything that we do, and fair sailing is the second one. Everybody needs to do the right thing. Now we're into the when boats meet, the part 2 rules. These are important concepts in regards to the structure. There are right-of-way rules. There are only 4 different relationships that boats can have to determine who has right-of-way. So that's port and starboard, windward leeward, clear astern, or when one of the boats is tacking, or both boats are tacking. There's only 4 to work out who has right-of-way. But then sometimes we have general limitations. So the first one is no contact. The second one, or probably the most important one, then after that is changing course. So you might be right of way, but you can't change course and run into someone if they can't keep clear. If you change course, you've got to give them room to keep clear. Then everything sort of changes at marks and obstructions. So that's the mark room, and then obstructions when you're going to run into a reef. And then there are some other requirements which are less commonly used. So just to summarise that, we've got section A. One boat is always right of way, and these rules are applied in order. The general limitations we talked about, no contact, acquiring right of way, changing course, and then if you're on the same tack and overlapped, there's a limit as to how much you come from astern, there's a limit as to how much you can luff the boat on a reach. And what this is saying is that right of way is not absolute. You can have right of way, you can be on starboard, but it doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to. Then we've got mark room, and I'm going to cover that in detail, but because right of way never turns off, it's possible that going around a mark, you can have mark room, but you can also be, let's say, going downwind, you can also be on starboard tack, and you've got right of way. So you can sail outside of mark room if you want to. A couple of limitations, but you can do that. And then the way that structurally the rules work is that you get exonerated if you're just taking room or the mark room that you're entitled to. You can break one of these right-of-way rules and you get exonerated. So it's the same as though you had never broken the rule. So we'll talk about that in detail. Does that make sense? So there's always a right-of-way boat. There are some limitations. And to make sure that we can all get around the mark safely and in an orderly fashion, then we've got the mark room rules. There's some other stuff, if you've got to keep clear. You might be on starboard, but you've got to keep clear of a capsized or tack boat. But that's pretty rare. Safety. Okay, I mentioned earlier that I'm not going to fully teach all of the rules here, but this is a website, and we're going to put an article up this afternoon, which will have the link to this. But in terms of when I need to practice learning my rules, refresh, make sure that I'm fully up to speed, then I go to this website and I click on this bit here and I just run through the scenarios, and that gets me quite clear in my mind. And I'll be doing that before the Sailing World Cup final. There's two scenarios. In this scenario here, this is a giveaway boat. Is there mark room at the start?
No.
Correct. In this scenario here, they're sailing along like this. Is there room for red to get in here, to go through?
No.
Okay, so it's not there. Is there room for red to luff up and keep clear of the start boat? Okay, that's what they need to do.
Good directions of black arrow.
Yeah, the wind direction will always be coming from the top of the page.
Okay.
The top.
Can I ask a question, Ben?
Yep.
What if it's 3 minutes to the start in that situation? Can I get mark room?
No,
Still.
still.
So there's no final approach anymore?
That's obstruction. That's a different rule. If the boats are sailing along like this, 3 minutes to the star, that is an obstruction but not a mark.
Okay.
So, well, it's probably actually, if we do it in that scenario, that's an obstruction. The right-of-way boat can choose which side to pass the obstruction. This is 3 minutes to the start. It can choose, but it must let the other boat
Clear the obstruction.
go the same way.
It's got to be button
Yeah.
to allow the safety.
Yep, got it. Well, it's the obstruction rule, rule 19, that they must allow them to pass. It's the same as if they were,
If they can though, sometimes you find the tide and the wind are playing against each other and you have to manoeuvre to get out of the way bloody hard.
it is, so everyone needs to think ahead on that. In this circumstance here, I can't think, if we take that out, I can't think of any reason why red can't bear away.
He's got the wind pushing him.
Yeah, and the obligation, the wind's coming here, the
Well,
obligation,
scenario is your wind's about 5 knots, the tide is about 4 knots. what the hell? You know, it's hard work.
We're just talking about the rules, pal.
I'll address, that's a good point. The amount of room that you need to give, the time that you need to start thinking about these things varies according to the conditions, the existing conditions at that point in time. So champagne sailing conditions, 12 knots of breeze, slack tide is not a problem. When you've got very little breeze and it's going to take your boat longer to react, so to respond promptly in a seaman-like manner, then you need to bring everything forward as to your actions to fulfil your obligations. A similar scenario, I think that's probably covered it, but if it was, that's a starboard tack boat that both of these boats need to avoid. The right-of-way boat, so leeward, wants to go behind, but must also allow the other overlapped boat room the same way. You cannot go and run into that.
It's a good sports boat you should.
It's not,
Sports boat.
it's actually the rule. That's a complete rule, black and white. Okay, the other scenario I'd like to just point out, go here. So we're set up like that, approaching.
Black's the start boat, is it?
Yep, black's the
Hard
start.
to see back here.
Yep, black.
End of the line. Where's the orange one at the
Yep.
right hand end?
Yep, that's the line.
Oh, there.
Yep, so the line's from there to there. So if we have a look at this blue boat here, it's going to cross like that. This boat here has got room at the moment to sail between the blue and the red. This one's going faster. Let's bring them up to there. So in that case, this red boat here has got room to sail through this gap.
Can you just repeat that, please?
At this point here,
How is that different from the previous one? Barging. How is that not barging?
Yep,
Let him finish.
yep, understand that. At this point in time, this boat here is not able to go to Luff and clear the start boat. So this boat has a limitation and is not able to do a sharp luff and a smash. The difference between that scenario and this one is that back here, red's got an option here. Red can bail out. So blue can lock out red when there's room for red to go somewhere else. But in this scenario here, this is called leaving the door open. Blue has left the door open, left room for red until this point in time. When it gets to that, it's too late and blue would be penalised.